So this question's for Anna.
With an A.
Anna. Okay, Anna. Does society have any interest in placing boundaries of any sort on the consenting sexual behavior of adults? So I'm not talking about adults, toward children or anything like that, but where adults consent to do things together. Does society have any interest in what goes on there or not, and why?
I do not think that a large, pluralistic, late modern democratic society does, or has enough interest to do that in order to, that justifies the limitations on people's personal freedom that would involve. However, now I'm not going to speak for, a very small country or a small, a tribe of 30, or even, several hundred. I think actually in those situations you probably do have strong interests in creating taboos and limits on people's sexual behavior. And I'll also say, I'm not sure, I think maybe I emphasized individualism a little bit. In a society like ours, we make those decisions and we determine ourselves in the context of communities. But what I would argue for is that there are many communities, and that there should be some flexibility and permeability about the communities to which we choose to belong. And those communities, those small communities, certainly, like a congregation, do perhaps have an interest. I worry about that a little bit when it comes to raising children, and what that would mean for their freedom. But in general, for adults, I think have some interests in having their own social mores.
So I just want to ask, so the difference is you could have a small, repressive community of 30 because they have an interest in regulating sexual desire or sexual activities between consenting adults, but a large community of 1 million, that's problematic. Is there a line somewhere where, in terms of the size, where the society no longer has an interest? And if not, what's the difference? Why does the small community have an interest, but the large community not?
Well, I think you might be dealing in extremes. If I were to sort of really sit down and have a proper thought experiment, I'm sure I would say there are certain things that this group of 20, 30 ought not to do under any circumstance, or any group ought not to do. But where I'm drawing the line is when what I see as possible in a society of 300 million is that people can have individual freedom and belong to communities. And also it is impossible in a country of 300 million people to have meaningful cultural, moral community for us all as a whole, without that being incredibly intrusive. And so that's kind of where I'm drawing the line is, yeah. Also I worry about, I think probably some of that also comes in with democracy and the kinds of democracy you purport to have, and if you purport to have it. And so,
but in terms of the interest, so the question was, so I think
yes, had to do it, yeah.
Small communities of 30 have an interest in restricting. Large communities don't have an interest in restricting.
Yes. Or don't have as much of an interest, no.
Okay. And why not? Simply because of the size?
Perhaps a large community does have an interest, but I think that it's lessened, and it's not enough to balance out the loss of personal freedom. That sort of maintaining blanket rules about sexuality would involve.
Question?